Okay, I think we're live. It's trying anyway. All right, let's see if we're live. I think we might be.
It says we are on the top of my screen.
Oh yes, it does up there. Yay. Okay, I wasn't in there. I was on the try and find us on the Facebook. Here we go. Beautiful.
Ooh,
do you want to share that to your page as well? Hello, everybody. On purpose, we've got somebody watching, and that might be me actually. So
Oh, I just opened it as well.
Okay, good. All right, now I'll see if I can bring it up so we can see if we get some comments and stuff. All right, have I got you?
Yep.
All right, awesome. Let's kick off. So today we have myself, Carissa, for those of you who don't know, and Ian Hawkins, a personal evolution coach. And we're just going to be chatting all things personal development, professional development, purpose, living on purpose, what that feels like, and what that is like as far as like how we can grow and evolve as the people that we are living on purpose. And yeah, so hello, if you jump on live, say hello. Oh, Sarah's already on. Give us a wave, Sarah. And Ian, do you want to introduce anything else other than?
No, I think that covers it for now. I think let's just get into it and we'll see where we land.
Yeah, awesome. Perfect. Well, I thought we might start a little bit with you. Yeah, hi, Sarah. Tell us a little bit about like where you've come from to get to be a personal evolution coach and what that kind of looks like for you.
Yeah, sure. My own journey has been my own evolution, and I came from a place where I was doing very little evolving for a long time, very much stuck in the cycle, stuck on the treadmill and going nowhere in a hurry. But probably always had that desire within me for things to be better. I just didn't know how. And like with most people, when they go on a personal development journey, there's a moment in time, a catalyst for change moment where that forces you to look at life in a whole different way. And for some people, that's their own health. Well, for me, it was losing my dad at too young an age. So for him, I mean, so that was, yeah, oh, wow, 13 years, maybe 14. But that was one of those moments where, yeah, I can clearly remember just questioning life. Like, what are we doing? Like, what am I doing? And am I happy about where my life's going? I think around that age, late 30s, early 40s, you already start to look at life as perhaps halfway done. And you start to have that question. I mean, I hear it from people all the time. Like, what have I actually done? What have I contributed? And what has my life meant? And yeah, so while I'd already started to have those conversations with myself, it really took something like that, unfortunately, to kick me into gear. And even that, it did take me a while then to actually to make more progress. It just had me asking questions. And I think that's probably any evolution, is that when you start to ask questions, then you start to find answers. And so you start to ask different questions because you're looking at the world in a whole other way. Totally. So, yeah, so I continued, and then, there were more sort of moments that had me going, okay, I need to do this differently and do this differently. And then I sort of stumbled onto something. I think I reached out to my brother in the end, and he did the best thing ever, right? From anyone who knows this around family, if you get told, and maybe this is my family, but many would share this, if you get told what you've got to do, you most likely resist.
Yeah.
He just sent me a link and said, oh, check out this guy. He's a friend of mine. And that's all he said. And
Yeah,
but that
okay.
was good because I clicked on it, and this guy was talking. The most of what he was discussing and really pushing was mindset.
Yeah,
And
okay.
and from a sporting background, I was like fascinated because I'd already started to dabble in that idea of sports psychology to improve my own performance.
Yep.
And so all this talk around mindset, but I also, it was like, okay, I need to listen to this every day. But it was also a real feeling of cringing because it was so uncomfortable for me,
Yeah.
all these things they were talking about. So that just set me on a path of learning more and more. And I started that process of letting go of so much crap that I didn't need to be carrying from an emotional perspective. I remember one particular exercise where we were writing letters to people of forgiveness, not for them, but for ourselves, and writing these small letters to a whole lot of different important people. And then really 3 pages into writing stuff around my dad, and in tears going, oh, I guess I've got some unresolved stuff there. And over this journey, I've learned that while what was presenting to me was my frustration around external sources, really the frustration was my own, was actually what was going on for me. I know that now, but at the time it was like, you want to blame the world. But actually just thinking about it last night as a lesson that I took my clients through a webinar last night was all around that, taking full responsibility for your life. Again, one of those real cringe moments where you're like, what do you mean? Like, so many things have happened to me. How can I be taking full responsibility for that?
Totally.
And yeah. So once I went down that path, and I'll try and keep it short because I could chat all day. I realized that I really had this deep desire to help other people. And when I saw that life could be different, and that you didn't have to be stuck on this treadmill, and you didn't have to be stuck feeling the emotions that you were feeling, I wanted to show other people the way. And initially I probably was a bit too forthright with my opinions and ideas. And I quickly learned that you've got to lead by example, go and do, and then people will come and ask you questions as you go.
Totally. Yeah. I get that. 3 things that popped out to me when you were talking about all of that. The first thing was like curiosity. It's so big and such a massive integral part of becoming, is that you have to be curious. You have to be curious about the way that you see the world. You have to be curious about your perception of what is happening in your reality. You have to be curious about like your thoughts and responses to things. And it's so huge and so massive to start to be curious, because I think that there's so many people walking around not being curious at all. And it really does start that evolution process.
Yeah. Stuck well, not necessarily happy with the status quo, but not really sure what to do about it.
Yeah, totally.
Good point. What thought came to my mind was I don't really know a lot about what your sort of transformation was either. I know that you grew up in an environment that was very much personal development and health focused. So a lot of this wasn't as foreign to you as to most of us when we get to an older age. Actually, a lot of it was already there. It's been a bit of a different process. So maybe sharing a bit of that.
Definitely. Well, one of the other things that you mentioned that really stood out was that responsibility, and taking full radical responsibility of where you're at has been something that I've been challenged with most of my life, because my mum has been a kind of personal development junkie for my entire life. And what came with that was me as a teenager and as a young adult being challenged with my taking responsibility. And that, in those early kind of 20s and the teens, I probably paid attention to it in a way where I may have found it easier to deal with, school and bullying and stuff than maybe what other people would have, because I had kind of been given this idea that maybe I had more control than what I thought I had, or what most people would lead you to believe.
Yeah, right.
And then in the early 20s, it kind of really slapped me in the face, really.
Yeah.
It was like, she would kind of call me out on if you know, if I was basically playing the victim card, like something's happening to me, she would challenge me on it. And, you know, most people would see that as like, oh my God, you know, that's so amazing. And so how lucky are you to have a mum who's in personal development? And yeah, totally. Like I mean, now looking back on it, absolutely. But at the time, holy shit, that's challenging, right?
I'm just thinking about my own kids and some of their frustrations on so I relate to that totally.
Yeah, totally. And so yeah, my journey's been an interesting one for sure. I, you know, in my early 20s was pretty happy with not paying much attention to kind of really developing. And then as I got older, I moved overseas for 2 years and really went inward and decided that I wanted to kind of live life on my terms and really change the way that I was kind of showing up to contribute. And that was actually the third thing that I really pulled out of what you were saying before, is coming from this space of contribution and seeing how what really lights me up on the inside and like what I feel really excited and passionate about, and how I can actually do that every day. Like, how can I be more excited about like doing whatever it is that I've got to do on a daily basis and share it with other people in a way that might help them.
Yeah, love it. I wonder, because I know we're going to get more around purpose as the conversation goes, how much of what you just described there about your journey plays out with your coaching? Is a lot of what you're helping people with is around taking responsibility?
Yeah, totally. Responsibility is a huge one, especially from like, to me, that gives the most power. When you realize how much your reality is a complete and direct reflection of your internal world, then like the game changes. You can become and be and have whatever it is that you truly desire through taking responsibility. Because once you realize that it's up to you, you realize that you've got more control than what you realize, and things aren't happening to you, they're happening for you, and everything you can kind of assess. And again, bringing back that curiosity, like, okay, this is what's going on in my reality right now. What am I doing that's impacting that? Like, what am I doing to create that? What am I doing to make it feel or look this particular way? Or what lessons can I get from it? And especially in business, you know, people quite often will walk around and be like, oh, I gave up my business because there just wasn't a market for it. Or I decided not to do my purpose because, you know, maybe it just wasn't really meant for me. And it's like, well, no, like, how about we look at like what's going on in your internal world to see why you're projecting this, like, you know, failure of a business or a business that's not quite performing, or, you know, all of that relates into life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I, if it's okay, I just want to touch on something you said there, because I know some people will get triggered by that. Is that, like, you know, life's happening for me, and, you know, often the question is, well, what about these people in this situation and these people in this situation? Well, it's not taking away the mysteries of the world. Like, why are some people born into this particular space in the world, into this environment? Like, I don't know the answer to all that. Do we choose it? Like, is it just something that happens? But to me, it's just remembering, like, no matter where you're at and what's happened, you do get to do exactly what you said, which is to choose. And when you consciously choose, when you are intentional about what you choose, then you can change the external. And probably the best example that I can think of is that a lot of my journey has been around me processing emotions, and particularly anger. And that played out in so many environments, and those who've played sport with me know that was one particular place where I triggered massively. You know, they talk about white line fever, but that was because I wasn't allowing myself to use those emotions elsewhere, those natural emotions. And actually that journey of anger was like, I was coming across lots of different situations where I was seeing other people angry. And I can tell you, as I've worked really hard on that, the amount of times I come across someone now in my space who is expressing anger is so few now.
Yeah.
And so that was like, that's to me a great example of how things will shift, because like Abraham talks about, like, they're just zigging and zagging past you. People are still there, but it's just not in your focus.
Totally.
So when you're focusing on something, like, for example, another good example that maybe people could relate to from my audience, if your partner is pregnant, suddenly you're seeing pregnant women everywhere. Yeah. Where did they come from? Well, they've always been there. It's just your focus. So I don't see them anymore. And again, they're still there in the same numbers, I assume. But it's just that, what the external reflecting what's going on with you internally.
Totally. And that is such a huge point that I really talk about, is that, like, it's a mirror reflection. Like you said, with the anger, like, it's part of the focus, but it's also this, like, reflection of what's going on with you. You know, so you may not be focused on the anger, but the anger is an issue, so something that you've been working on. And so therefore there's like a mirror getting put up in front of you all the time, like anger,
yeah,
purely for the purpose of showing you that there's something that you can work on, like to trigger you, to have you feel something, to have you experience something, just so that you can, again, get curious and go, okay, why am I feeling so uncomfortable about this? Or why is everyone around me so angry? Oh, maybe there's something within me that I can look at, you know?
Yeah. It's perhaps the most challenging thing you'll ever face, but also the most freeing. When you go, okay, well, I'm in my head, I'm blaming this other person and it is their fault, but then actually reflecting and going, no, this is something for me to process. I remember the first time in a couple of particularly emotional situations with people close to me, asking myself that question, going, really? And it's like, no, I know I need to do this. And it's amazing what you can shift when you do take that responsibility to say, even at a time where you're feeling like someone has inflicted something on you, it's still your journey to take to shift whatever that is going on for you.
Totally. And so huge. And it is really something that takes a lot of courage to start seeing, because it's, in many ways, it's really easy to blame other people and not take responsibility. But in the long run, it's not. It's actually really a lot harder to do it that way, because you feel like the world's against you and you feel like everybody's doing something that makes you feel terrible, or, you know, that different things are happening around you that are impacting your life, you know? And so, you know, in many ways, taking responsibility can be difficult, but like you said, it's also the most freeing. And to me, it's so incredibly powerful to live from that space and to be curious about why things are showing up in front of you based on what's going on in your own internal world. Absolutely.
And you said a phrase that was similar to a phrase I learned, 10 two-letter words. If it is to be, it is up to me. That's something I had like pasted across my wall for years, because it was like, there's no one else is going to come and rescue you. Yes, you can get help, but you've got to take responsibility, and you've got to change it.
Yeah. So for if there's anybody watching, I can see there's a couple of people on live. Say hello, and so we can see who you are. It's not telling me who's on at the moment, but in relation, and we'll keep going. If you have questions along the way, please shout out. We would love to interact with you guys. So let us know what you're feeling or thinking as we speak to this, and if anything's resonating, let us know. But when it comes to living your purpose and coming up against some of those things that might be getting in your way, like, what's that kind of been like for you? I know that you've had like a really big kind of growth journey, even more deeper over the last 12 months, but what does that kind of look like around A, choosing how to get into or work in your purpose, and then B, what did you come up against that like tried to hold you back?
Yeah, well, you know, on the theme of what we're talking about, the probably biggest thing that holds us back is ourselves. But probably the most powerful thing in terms of if you're starting your journey and getting a bit overwhelmed, well, I've got to find this purpose. To me, it's not, when you start on that journey, it's not saying like it's this and having that define you. It's actually saying, well, I want to find what is my purpose today, and starting there, because it will continue to evolve. Yes, there is a theme to it, whether it's responsibility or something else. There's a theme to it, but how that plays out for you will continue to change as you grow. So take that pressure off yourself to realize that it's not, it doesn't have to be this big thing like saving the world, climate change at a massive scale. It can be just, what is your part to play in that? And to me,
totally,
what that part is for each individual, and yes, I'm talking to you as in everyone, it's finding where it is that you add value and finding what it is that you bring in such a natural way that you just do it. You do it for free. It's that thing that you do and you love doing it and it gives you such a buzz. I think for most people, definitely for me, it actually gives me tingles.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, no matter what the environment, then you start to find purpose. The other great thing about that is that you realize that the world needs more of it.
Yeah.
So that gives you such a powerful impetus to move forward, because you're looking, going, oh wow, I actually can do this, and there's a gap there where I need to do it. You'll do it for free because you love it, but also that tingles is a sign that you're in alignment with who you truly are. And to me, it's those parts that are so important. And from when I realized, well, I've started learning more about personality and how important it is, I suddenly had a realization that I've been beating myself up for all these things I couldn't do. And actually, it's these areas that I thrive in. I need to do more than that. Gary Vee, I haven't listened to him for a while, but I was listening to him, he said the same thing. You've got to not double down on your strengths, but triple down on them, and actually find what it is you do and find a way to bring more of that to your day. Find what it is you're a genius. And so the other part of that is I was learning, okay, all of these things, this is your gift. This is the place where you operate in your best, but these are the areas where you'll be challenged. And for me, it was like, I thrive when someone gives me structure. And I was working in an environment where I'd been left to my own devices and I had to create my own structure. So now I have spent a lot of years creating structure so I can do that when I'm not given it. But my absolute best is, here's the structure, go and do, this and this within that structure. And the other thing, I guess, that was, I was in a very detailed, focused job at the time. And I could do it because I'd been good at maths at school, and my dad was a maths teacher. So I'd learned that behavior to check and be thorough and all of those things. But it made me so tired, like it exhausted me. And then suddenly realized that purpose and your skills and what you bring, where you bring value, energizes you.
Yes.
So again, a big wake up call, because it's like there were times there I was feeling so tired. I actually posted something just the other day that I've posted it a few different places, and it's really got some traction. It's like you're not tired because of anything else except that you're not doing enough of what lights you up, or to that effect. And it's so true, because when, like, for example, right now, like, conversation's my thing, and I'm feeling amazing. I didn't feel so great this morning when I was sitting there working on my own. So yeah, it does. It gets you fired up. So it's finding that place is so crucial for unlocking where you add value, and where you add value is where you're going to find your purpose.
Totally. And like, the most defining moment that had me realize that I needed to be doing this work, my whole body was on fire. I was having a conversation with somebody. We were talking about money mindset. We were talking about her and her business and what was working and what wasn't. And previous to that, I'd been told by people that that's what I should be doing.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really owning it. And then in this moment, I was having this conversation, and I was so passionate and so excited, and like my whole body was like hot. Like I was like you said, with the goosebumps and everything. And and hey, Kim's just joined us. And to me, like, pay attention. For the people that are watching, pay attention to those moments. Pay attention to those moments when you're having a conversation with somebody and you're feeling really pumped and excited. Like, the two of us are personal development and growth junkies, right? Like, we spend majority of our time not only helping our clients do that, but also doing that for ourselves, right? 100%. We spend so much time every week working on ourselves to make sure that we are growing and evolving into like the best version of ourselves all of the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's why we're so excited talking about this type of content, and we could go on and on and on all day. I have no doubt that we could literally have this conversation that will go deeper and deeper and deeper.
Not sure anyone is to be watching, but yeah, we could.
Yeah, but like pay attention to those moments that when you're feeling really lit up and really excited, because that's going to be one of the kind of things that if you keep paying attention to that feeling, you're going to move more in the direction of like living on purpose and you know, feeling more excited about life and what you're doing and how you're contributing and how you're helping other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of people, maybe they don't express it, or maybe they're doing a lot. They have a deep desire to help people. And again, this would probably sound like it's going to be the theme of this conversation, but it really is the first person you need to help is yourself, by doing exactly what you just described then. And then the more you can find what it is about you that needs attention, then it actually allows you to, it gives you the energy, and you'll feel within yourself better about helping people, because this beautiful loop starts playing out, not where a lot of people are over giving or over receiving, but when you're starting to give and receive in equal measures, then it's amazing that spiraling up effect starts to happen, and things start to unfold, and opportunities start finding you that you couldn't have even imagined when you first started out on the path.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And I think, you know, making sure that your boundaries are clear, making sure that you know when your cup is feeling a little bit empty, and looking after yourself and all that kind of stuff. And that's something that I feel like I have had to learn that lesson time and time again. And I'm getting better at it, like so much better. Like when I think back to when I was working, you know, the standard 9 to 5 kind of job, if I was sick, I would still go to work. Like it would take a lot for me to take a sick day, like a lot.
And then still feel guilty at home, right?
Oh, so guilty. Like, I got taught when I was younger that if I had a sick day from school, I had to spend the entire day on the couch. If I wasn't sick enough to spend the day on the couch, then I wasn't sick enough to not be at school.
Yep.
And although that's a really powerful kind of work ethic lesson, it also kind of brings this like feel guilty for not being well, or like you're only sick if you're spending the whole day on the couch, right? And it's like, oh, is that really, you know? And as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at like, if I don't have to be dying on the couch to need a day for me. I don't need to be like coughing up a lung to actually say to my clients, look, do you know what? I've got to cancel today. I've got to reschedule because I can't give you my all. And that has been a challenging lesson to learn. And it's something that I've had to kind of go through again this week. I have just launched a 12-month online mastermind, and the first mastermind coaching call was meant to be on Tuesday. And I woke up and I was like, I am so sick. And in that moment, I had to decide whether I was going to stay in bed like my body was telling me to, or whether I was going to go and do the call like I had told my clients that I was going to do. And it was live, and they were all going to be joining me, and there was not really an easy way out. And I had to choose, like, am I going to look after my body and myself, or am I going to do what I should do, which is to show up for them? And so I decided that I really needed to look after me. And so I sent them all a message and said, look, I'm really sorry. We're going to have to reschedule. I just am not well enough. And I went back to sleep and was asleep until like 11:30.
Yeah, wow.
And I'm still kind of off the back of that. But the hardest part kind of in that decision-making was, am I really sick enough to cancel? Like, am I just like self-sabotaging, or am I just making this up? Or like, what's going on? Like, why am I sick at this moment? Why am I sick in this week? Like, you know, am I sick today purely so that I don't have to run that course, that session because I'm afraid to? And I was like, no. There's so much more at play to this. Like, chill and stop feeling guilty about taking the day.
And I wasn't going to go here, but just language is so powerful, right? And even stop feeling guilty. The subject is guilty, right? And it's like just, and I don't know, you know, throwaway line, but that would be, it would still impacts us when we catch ourselves focusing on what we don't want instead of what we do want. And I love that you've taken that responsibility to say, well, no, I can't show up this week. What tends to happen, particularly in business, right, is you never feel done. So you're like, oh, I've got to keep going, I've got to keep going.
Yep.
And the reality is you'll probably have 3 weeks of low productivity. If you'd taken one day off to rest,
exactly, then
you would have probably done that same amount of work in a day or two. And I think if we relate that to business, or to even if you're in a career, the same sort of thing. If you're not getting that rest and you're not getting that balance right, then all you're doing is slowly getting further and further into the hole. And because it can take a long time, you don't notice it day by day, but then suddenly 3 months down the track, you're like, how did I get in this hole? And it's making sure that you're nurturing your well-being first. And I know this is something we talked about before we got started. So should we go there now?
Yeah, let's do it.
So what have you learned from that experience of actually putting your well-being needs first?
Yeah, so I, as a general rule, have a pretty good kind of gauge for my own wellness. And that comes from it comes from my mum's a naturopath. And so I grew up with somebody who was like health focused my entire life. Secondly, when I was 27, I decided to go back and study full time and do a nutrition degree. So I've learned the like health science myself.
Yep.
And so as a general rule, like, even though those feelings of guilt or like I'm not doing enough do come up sometimes, as a general rule, I can totally override them and say, no, I need this and I'm going to look after myself. And one of the things that we were kind of talking about before we jumped on live was like what the actual kind of lesson is in what the actual illness is. Yeah. And I was saying to Ian that when I get sick, it's always throat then chest. And Ian brought up like, what's that about? Like what's going on there? And we were about to go into that. And I said, let's hold that and like have that conversation. Because I feel like this is something that is well, it's not business related, it's like life related, but this understanding that our body is telling us a message and it's always talking to us. And when we have symptoms, it's like the end of the line. Like you've been kind of, there's been other things that have been showing you that you're not paying attention to something, not paying attention to something, not paying attention to something. And then all of a sudden you get sick and it's kind of like, that's the end. Like that's when the body's like, no, I've had enough. I've tried to show you all these things that are going on. Yeah. And so for me, I always get chest and throat. And what Ian said was, that this is like expression, this, like it's your throat chakra. For those of you who don't know, this is our energy center of our throat. We have like lots of energy centers within our body, and this one's all about expression. It's all about speaking up. It's all about speaking our truth. It's all about getting things off our chest. And so for me, the question that I always ask myself is, what am I not speaking up about, or what do I need to get off my chest? And then the answers to that sometimes come and sometimes they don't. And but usually, even just through the process of asking those questions, I can come to, like, I start getting better.
Yeah, nice. And the self-awareness is always the first step. You can't take any action until you take that time just to tune in and listen. And what I started to say, but you said hold fire, was often what manifests later down the track. Oh, before I go there, you talked about, getting those signs. A really good mate of mine described it like this. It's feather, brick, truck. So the universe will give you a little tickle and just go, you got to pay attention here. If you don't, you'll get something a bit bigger and you'll get hit with a brick. Yeah. And for any of us who have been in a bit of a hole, then if you don't take notice, then it will come in the form of a truck, something much bigger that you are forced to face. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we talk about something playing out, and you were saying that quite often it's the same place, it's yes, it's manifesting now in expression. But what I was asking you was, well, you don't necessarily need to know, but at some point in your life, there was an anchor created where you didn't speak up, where really inwardly you knew you should have. And then that creates a pattern that plays out again and again. And it can be in the form of well-being, or it can be in the form of different situations, or whatever it is. And so to me, the most important thing there is you don't have to go, well, two things. That initial event could have been this massively traumatic event, but it could have been a trauma that is something as simple as a throwaway line from someone else. And it's a throwaway line that you chose to create a belief around. And sometimes that throwaway line was from someone. And the example I often use is when you're young, you may have had a moment where you did something and everyone thought it was really cute and everyone laughs. But as your small brain created this story that they're laughing at me, whereas really they're just so taken by how pure and cute you were. And that can play out over and over again whenever someone's laughing, like public speaking, right? When everyone's doing something in front of a crowd, well, what are they saying, and what judgment? And then it can play out in this pattern. And so for something like a cold, and actually was working through with a client a while ago, that they opened up that actually there'd been this moment in their life where they hadn't spoken up, and it was still playing out for them. There were different times where they would just happily stay silent rather than cause any sort of ruckus or tension or anything like that. So and what I was going to say, you don't have to go back and find out what the event was. You don't have to go and dig deep and go, oh, this, there's this really traumatic thing that I have either buried or never knew. It's just going through a really nice clearing process, which I know is part of the work you do as well, but definitely a big part of what I do is to help people clear whatever it is. And you don't have to know what it is. You don't have to, which I think is, to me, so powerful, because so often people get caught in the pattern by going and talking to people and replaying the same stuff over and over again. And to me, I don't understand how that actually helps. How does that help you feel better? But again, I don't understand that. I just know if your preference is to go, well, I want to move past this without having to wade through the crap that was whatever that situation was, well, then you can do that. And it's far more beautiful and far more peaceful when you do it that way.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And that's kind of what I've always seen as one of the problems in traditional, somebody's giving us some angry faces. Did I just see that right? No, I think I just saw that wrong. The problem that I found with traditional kind of methods of helping people move through kind of processes like that is that bringing it all back up. And I definitely am not one who needs to, for sure. And I can kind of pinpoint what's been going on as to why, like what's been happening in this most recent time. And for me, it's kind of part of the way that my body processes and lets go of something that I'm no longer in need of. And I'm okay to go through that process. And if my body needs to tell me to take that time off, then like I'm kind of okay with doing that. There's probably a better way to do it, which is just take the time off before you need to get sick.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah.
I learned this one a few years ago, actually in corporate, which was nice change, having a wellbeing action plan. And that can relate to physical health, mental health, emotional, spiritual health, but often all of those four are playing out together anyway. It's recognizing what are the triggers that happen before you start getting the bigger triggers. And for me, it might be I start getting a bit snappy, or I start feeling a bit overwhelmed. And then there's some really simple things I can do before that will take me back to my default level. But then also, if you don't read those signs and you go further down, and you find yourself in this bigger hole, what are those steps that you know will get you back moving forward again quickly? And for me, it's always the same thing. It's always people, it's always exercise, and it's always nature. And so if I'm in a bit of a hole, then in my default, I'll reach out to someone who I know I can have a conversation like that with, and then get active and get out and in nature somewhere where it really has such a positive impact on our whole body at every level.
How much impact, or how relevant do you consider your physical health being in, and your mental health being in, your business like success?
Oh, all of those parts are crucial, and to me, like I said there, it's all four of those bodies: the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And I love how important mental health is becoming, and obviously there's more work to be done. But to me, the next level that really needs focus is emotional health, because I believe that a lot of the physical and mental are playing out because of this lack of people processing emotions. And particularly, I'll talk from a male perspective, because obviously that's what I know better. We don't tend to allow ourselves that space. Mm-hmm. And there are certain events on the calendar where it's okay for men to be upset. And so we tend to gravitate towards more of those circumstances. Sometimes it's sport, something like Anzac Day comes to mind, because it's a really emotional day, and people feel good to be able to process that. Maybe for some people it's funerals, but whatever it is, it becomes an overwhelming thing, because not allowing themselves to process those emotions every single day. And again, none of this is our fault, because it's just patterns that have been repeating for, centuries. When I think about, what we've kind of learned, and we sometimes repeat with our children, is telling them how to feel. Don't be upset, don't cry, don't be angry, don't do that, don't do that. So we grow up with these patterns. When we get older, we are genuinely feeling an emotion, but the block there, the mental block, saying you're not allowed to feel this, not consciously, right? This is at a subconscious level, this is playing out. And then we have this internal conflict. Well, why do I feel so crap? And then you sink lower and lower because of these differing messages coming. Your body's telling you, like you said before, your body's always talking to you, and your emotions are such a big part of how that
totally
gets passed on to you. So if you don't listen to those emotions because of programming, then it will impact mental and physical. And when that happens, it impacts whether you're in business or whether you have a job, or even in your family life. Mm-hmm. Then it's making sure you're nurturing all of those areas.
Totally.
So I probably did spend too much time on my physical health at one point.
Yep.
And it's amazing how I can keep my physical health at a really high level now with less exercise, because I'm doing so much work in the other three areas. And it still blows me away at times. But it just, like something I saw the other day is saying that sometimes the weight you need to lose is off your emotions, or mentally, or something like that, or is not the physical weight. I can't remember exactly what it was, but the message was that, it's addressing the other areas, and that's going to, yes, you still need to do the physical work, but if you address the other areas, the physical work not only will become easier, but you'll actually see much better results.
Totally. And like, similar to what I was saying before around like the kind of metaphysical component of like having a chest infection or a throat infection, similar can be said about any type of condition. And so when we talk about holding extra weight, it can be a protective layer. It can be something that you hide behind because of, a variety of different reasons. And, same goes for all of the things. And for those of you who this is kind of new for, having a metaphysical reason or understanding of like what's going on in your physical body is so incredibly powerful. Like, one of the things that I thought of before when Ian was talking about the truck, the feather, the brick, the truck, was like when you get like put on your back, like when people have back problems and they get totally put out for like 2 weeks or a month, or they have some type of like a disc problem or a whatever, looking at like what's going on there is so powerful, because then you can actually start to really change the physical symptoms through doing the emotional and the spiritual work. Because when there's stuff going on for you internally, it's going to come out as a symptom. And so, this is like, there are reasons that we have sayings like the weight of the world on your shoulders, or is such a pain in the neck, or is such a pain in the ass, or that that's giving me such a headache. All of these sayings are kind of almost subconscious, that they come out because it's actually the truth,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And it's really interesting when you look at each individual body part and you look at each individual kind of, loose emotion that can be kind of related to that. When they talk about like my Achilles heel, it's like, hey, if you've got problems in your Achilles, what in your life is playing that role of your Achilles heel? And how can you then go and look at it, see what's going on, and why is this kind of happening to you? What is this symptom a reflection of in terms of what's going on internally?
Yeah. And for that, go.
There you go.
I was going to say, for those of you who this is a new topic for, have a look at Louise Hay's work and have a bit of a read the sort of messages that she used to send out to the world. And when you start to look at those lists and then look at a certain injury or illness that you have and look at what that symptom's suggesting, perhaps at first you might be a little bit taken aback, going, oh, really? But then when you really feel into that and think about it, you'll go, oh yeah, that's exactly what's going on for me at the moment.
Totally. Yeah. And it's the same as like where we kind of started in this conversation, which is like taking that radical responsibility. Like, I would never blame somebody else's illness for me getting sick. Like, you don't catch a cold. You're only vulnerable to that cold based on what's going on with your own body, whether that be your own immunity because you've been run down, and you've been run down because you're overworking. You're overworking because why? Why do you feel like you have to overwork? Why do you feel like you have to?
I like that a lot.
And really consider let's take it back to why your immunity is weak enough to catch somebody else's flu, right? Or somebody else's like cold or illness or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then the other element of that is, if there's 10 people in a room, one person's sick, why do not the other 9 get sick? If one other person catches the cold, why didn't the other 8?
Yeah.
It's not, there's so much more to it than what we are led to believe from the standard medical kind of view on health.
Absolutely.
Or sickness, I should say, or not health.
I don't know how much truth there is to this, but I read something saying that in some ancient civilizations, the doctor got paid or rewarded based on then being no one sick.
Wouldn't that be a nice world?
Yeah, exactly right. You keep the community well, and then you get all the rewards in the world. It's like, that's an interesting, yes, because then they wouldn't be pushing you into all sorts of different things that. It's a whole other conversation.
It is. And we could go down a rabbit hole with that.
Exactly.
Especially based on my health background, I feel like that is something I could talk about forever. But it is, as far as like bringing it back around to kind of business, for me, this kind of personal, spiritual kind of evolution of self is so important when it comes to becoming the business that you want as well. As far, like, to me, life and business is like this. There's not really any separation for me. I make clear boundaries in separation as far as like time off and time on. But apart from that, like, the two are intertwined. And so the best thing that I can do for me in my business is continue to grow as me, because then I can give more to my clients. The more I look after myself, then I can give more to my clients.
Yeah.
The more I grow and learn and evolve in myself, the more I can show up, and the better I can show up, and the best version of me can be put up for my clients. And to me, that's like the importance of all of that kind of health in all aspects, how that relates to business.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it there. It does play out in every single area. I think it's Jim Rohn said, everything affects everything. So if you are having a certain area of your life that you are struggling in, it will infect the other areas. But on the flip side, if you've got areas that are starting to thrive, then you'll see that play out in the other areas as well. Totally. So it is very much a holistic, and when I say holistic, not necessarily any label to that, apart from that you need to address all the important areas in your life.
Totally.
Yeah. And then so, go.
I was just going to say, then it comes back around to what we said earlier about the mirror. Like if something's going on in your personal life, you're going to notice flow-on effects in your business. Yeah. And you may not be able to put a correlation between the two. Like you might not be able to see the link as to why that thing's happening in your business or whatever. But when you look for it and you, again, become curious and like look into what's playing out, then you can sort a lot of your problems out.
Yeah. And a thought just come to mind now is whether you are in a job or in a business, that often we put those things first because of, they bring the money in, and we've got to make sure that we're satisfying the needs in that area, which we do, right? In the world we live in, that's a real need. It's just remembering that if you were faced with the possibility of losing everything, would you choose losing your job, or would you choose losing someone in your family, or choose losing your own well-being or your own life? And it's an easy answer, right? But too often we putting the work, in whichever form that is for you, before everything else. And I know when I was faced with losing a close friend of mine, probably 10 years ago now, sitting in my backyard after I just found out that he'd passed, and just saying, right now, in this very moment, I would happily sell every possession I have and take my family and go live in a small shack away from the rest of the world, because right at that point, nothing else seemed important. I was struggling to make meaning of it, but I think, we don't often enough take the time to look at our life that way. What is most important? And no matter what you are doing with your life, where you're contributing, the thing at the top of your list has got to be you. It's all of those things that we've just talked about. It's your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual well-being. And then what's next most important? Now, I assume that most people, the next most important thing will be some sort of connection with someone. And then it flows on from there. And often what we find is that, some people are going to be different, right? But I think for most people at the moment, their work's probably not going to be in those top three. Maybe that's a generalization. I don't know. But to me, for me, it's well-being, then family, then the other things I'm passionate about, love, and then that obviously business falls into that and helping people. But that's not necessarily one or the other. So yeah, I think that's tied in nicely with the whole conversation, and the responsibility absolutely should always start with yourself, because then you can show up in all your other areas as the best possible version of you and get the best possible results and add the most possible value.
Totally. Well, thank you so much, Ian, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Loved it.
I think we've probably been going for almost an hour, so we should probably wrap that up.
Yep, I think that's a good idea.
And for anybody who has watched on replay, drop us a comment if you have any questions about the topics that we've just discussed. And if you want to reach out to either of us, I will tag Ian in the post properly, so it has his information if you want to contact. Is there anything that you have going on that you want to invite people to join you with? I know you did a thing last night, but is there anything else coming up?
Yeah, so I'm doing a free event on the 22nd of June in Sydney.
Cool.
And if people go and have a look at my personal details on there, they'll be able to find it. But if not, just send me a message. And it's around living your best life. So the event's called Activate Your Best Life, and it's helping people to see how that they can start taking steps now to start making that happen, no matter where they're at. So that's June 22nd, Saturday afternoon.
Beautiful. For those of you in Sydney, I would definitely check that out. I'm in Melbourne, so unfortunately, otherwise I would be there. I would totally be there.
And hopefully a few other people from our community will be there from Sydney. I know that some of those guys have come to some of my events before,
awesome.
Which is always great to have that support from.
Yes, totally. And that is a whole other conversation that we could go down another
It is.
with. But So thanks again for joining me today, Ian, and thanks for everybody who's watched either live or on replay. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, happy Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah. Thanks, Chris. I
Right.
appreciate the time.
No worries. See you later.
Okay.
Bye.